There was a time where Kevin Feige was like,
You give me 18 months, I give you a career.
it's not like that anymore.
Nah. So here we are and getting some sort of semblance of what other actors perhaps were thinking when thinking about taking a meeting with Marvel. It's like I could either ruin or you certainly aren't thinking about the heyday. You're thinking about what's happening now. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me as always is Mr. Brian Schultz. Marvel Roundup. Spidey 4. Brian, we got a teaser, possibly a teaser coming up that's going to be attached to Avatar 3 along with Doomsday. What are the possibilities? What have you been hearing about that?
Yeah, so I think that could be a really interesting dichotomy if you do get that, a rare instance where you have two Marvel blockbusters debuting their first official footage in front of the same film. I guess we did an examination in a recent show about how you would play the Doomsday teaser. I wanted to throw at you, how would you play the brand new day teaser? This is obviously a project they've been very, very happy to share set photos and footage and kind of have that out in the public domain. But we know they are clearly going for a tonal shift, an effects shift, and almost this is chapter 1 all over again, not chapter 4 in the Tom Holland Spider-Man Chronicles. So how would you play that? Like, what would you want to see in a brand new day teaser that would get you super duper excited?
I mean, where we left off with No Way Home was, to me, one of the most classic Spider-Man scenes in a long time. Where he ends up and starts from, I think, will be something I think people will be looking forward to seeing. How this teaser would look to me, small glimpses of what we've been seeing in leaked photos of his swinging. What this new Hulk may sound like.
Interesting. Okay.
What perhaps even a bit of levity with regards to the Punisher in terms of we seeing him we're seeing situations that looks intense, but then you hear Peter like, hey, saying something smart to the Punisher or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of things happening. And of course, some teases of what he may be up against. So there's a lot to play here with. And of course, his reacclimation to the world and him establishing Peter Parker in this world. So there's a lot here to wonder about based on what transpired in No Way Home. So those are the sort of things I would be thinking about in this first teaser that to get us excited, showing us a little bit of that swinging, a little bit, nothing crazy, and perhaps teasing the Punisher and the Hulk's involvement, because obviously we know that he's in it. And perhaps, who knows, of even Tombstone. I don't know if we necessarily need him, because I think the focus is on the Hulk and the Punisher, and perhaps who Sadie Sink is playing, right? I'm not sure. I still think she's Mary Jane. I think that's the thing that makes the most sense to me. But what are your thoughts?
I'll take the Tombstone bit first. I say no villains at all. I think it's counterproductive in this teaser and not necessary. It's a teaser. You don't need to, we don't need huge set pieces here. And actually, I would argue against huge set pieces in this. I would say no villains at all. I would say this trailer to me should be 80 to 90% Tom Holland. And specifically, the thing I actually think would be pretty cool to see in the teaser, I would like to see a conversation between him and one of our mainstay friends where they don't know each other anymore. Where he knows them and they don't know him.
So whether he's talking about like Ned or something like
Ned
that?
Ned or Zendaya or somebody which we know Zendaya's part's not that big, but like a conversation, maybe it is with Ned, where Peter knows everything and Peter knows everything, but Ned is acting like he's never seen him before. and the dynamic is different than it was in Homecoming and Far From Home. I think that's actually where I would start the teaser. Just start in the conversation, almost like Social Network style, where it's like they just somehow ran into each other and they're like talking, but like completely talking past each other. And like it's jarring to you to see these like friends or romantic interests where they just have no connectivity on the one side. Because that to me is the payoff of No Way Home, right? Is the sacrifice that was made. So I would start there on the teaser.
And it would be interesting to see Ned, not the same jovial character that we've noticed. Perhaps his disconnection from Peter has caused them to make some perhaps poor choices that perhaps he may be the Green Goblin. Oh, who knows? Who knows?
Hobgoblin.
But
Yeah, at some point he has to
the
be
Hobgoblin.
Hobgoblin,
Yes,
right? So
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
and this we've seen like he is going to be at MIT. I think they've shown him in a sweatshirt, so he'll be at college now. But yeah, no, I think that would be a nice grounded emotional way to bring us back in and have the audience recognize, oh, we're in Tom Holland's Spider-Man world again, but things have changed. I'm with you. I think the suit has to make an appearance. I think he does have to do something. So I think you're right, though. I think it's got to be a little streets level. I don't really want to see him swinging through the skyscrapers. I think we've seen a lot of that. I think this is one where you want to see him doing
It's going to
something.
be different, though.
I know, but just something Spider-Man. Maybe it's on the walls of an alley or just like he's doing something where you're like, that is super, but looks very real. It looks very different than what I'm used to seeing in not only his movies, but the Toby and Andrew movies as well. So that's kind of something I want to see. I debated this. I think you're right. I think it's more likely you see Punisher than Hulk personally, because it's easier to do Bernthal in costume than it is to do full-on Hulk effects, because they're still shooting. They're still doing that. But I think they are going to want to plant at least a few seeds of other universe characters you already know that are in this movie. So whether that, Charlie Cox can say he's not in the movie, that's fine. But like if there's something like that, something like Bernthal makes a lot of sense. I think showing Spider-Man fighting one of them is probably almost inevitable because they love doing that. And it's sort of an easy, like, what made them fight? We know they're supposed to be on the same side, that kind of deal. I think that's fine. And then the other thing is in this universe, what's his face? J.K. Simmons is back, right? J. Jonah Jameson? He exists again in a different form. We haven't wiped him out, right? He was at the end of Far From Home. I was wondering if he might be around in this teaser.
Possibly. Let's see. Let's see. It's gonna. It'll be interesting. That's only what, probably less than
2 months. I think the other thing is I am fascinated to see the trending and the view counts and the buzz if they do have both of them. If they have Doomsday and they have Brand New Day, first footage, same exact time, same exact movie. I want to see how close this is.
That'll be interesting because I think people are there's more curiosity with Doomsday.
I think the initial buzz, you're right. I think you're right.
There's more curiosity to see what this is going to look like because we've pretty much gotten nothing other than those concept arts, whether and knowing whether or not they were real concept arts for something that we're going to see or whatever. But there's just so much mystery behind this Doomsday movie, whereas Spider-Man has been out in the open, right? And Doomsday is so secretive. So except for Channing Tatum telling us how dope this is going to be.
So my prediction is I think the Doomsday immediate reaction buzz and view count will be higher. But I think when you do the unpacking, I think the Spider-Man trailer is going to last longer. I just have this feeling that like when people like really start picking apart the footage, there'll be more questions, more things. Whereas I feel like in the Doomsday thing, it's much more of like it's much more like red carpet at the Oscars. It's much more like I saw who. I don't know that there's going to be. Maybe it depends on how they play it. We talked about having a Downey centric one versus a Downey kind of in the background one. Like I think it will be Downey centric, so I think he will get kind of all the attention coming off the teaser. But I just have this feeling that the Spider-Man one might ultimately draw as much, if not more, curiosity after the fact. Whereas the Doomsday one will be like, look at what they showed. And then you'll kind of step back and be like, I just saw a bunch of names and faces that I know.
That is my concern too, is that they're not going to put a lot of effort into showing us much in Doomsday, and it's just going to be a bunch of quotes, and perhaps we get some good stuff of Doomsday. But if we see Tony Stark, dum, 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 we'll see.
If he says if he says I am Doom, right?
It's like, yo, our worst fears are coming to fruition as to what we'll be seeing in Doctor Doom and in Doomsday, Avengers Doomsday. But we'll see, Brian. This is going to be very interesting. And what we see in Doomsday, I'm saying to you, the curiosity for Doomsday and what we'll see is going to be huge. I don't know if they'll give us enough to veer off what we've been saying about the movie and what this will be.
You're right. I mean, Doomsday is a circus. I mean, it's come, it is. It's like all the things you used to hear. Come see the human cannonball. Come see, like all these death-defying. Like that's what it is. It's the circus at the height of its fascination and its spectacle. But the question is it empty calories?
We shall see very soon. Jeremy Allen White speaks the new truth on Marvel. Brian, what did Jeremy Allen White say?
Oh, you guys got to go find the clip. Maybe Pablo can link it up here. He talks to Josh Horowitz. Yeah. He's out promoting his Bruce Springsteen biopic, and Horowitz asked him about the Marvel meeting. And I love the candor because he says, number one, he's like, I could have and should have. He basically admits he was a jerk in whatever meeting this was. He's like, I could have and should have handled it differently. He's like, it was a situation where he's like, I wasn't sure I wanted to be there to begin with. And he's like, very cryptically refers to like someone else made me go. He's like, they were pitching me to be the lead in something. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I should have taken that differently. And then he said, he's like, but he's like, there was a time when you had to do those meetings because if you could do one of those movies, you could make any movie you wanted. And he said, I don't know that it's like that anymore.
On this show, the Nerd Gen Report, we've been talking about why perhaps actors would be not as excited. I mean, certainly you have the Tatums out there, right? But then you have those people who you didn't hear too much about. You heard names, but there was no real full commitment as to if they were going to be a part of this universe. You heard the name Ryan Gosling. You heard a bunch of names.
Yeah.
But we've seen a bunch of faces already that have gone nowhere. Mordo, Clea,
Eros,
Hercules. Yeah. What purpose do I serve here? He's like, Maximus,
what possible difference can I make?
Well, I was going to say there was a time where Kevin Feige was like, Alonzo Harris, you give me 18 months, I give you a career. He's like, it's not like that anymore. It's not like that anymore.
Nah. So here we are and getting some sort of semblance of what other actors perhaps were thinking when thinking about taking a meeting with Marvel.
Yeah.
It's like, I could either ruin or you certainly aren't thinking about the heyday. You're thinking about what's happening now when you're getting that call. And what's happening now is what we've been talking about, how horrible Marvel has been since the heyday when we used to. Marvel could do no wrong back in the day, yo.
But I think it's interesting. He's admitting he tanked a meeting. He was not great in the meeting. And then he's saying, but part of the reason I felt that way is because that meeting no longer meant what it used to mean for my career. So I kind of didn't care. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have acted that way. But it didn't really matter. Yeah. And then he went on to be diplomatic because Horowitz was like, there's been some fan casting of like you as Wolverine. And he's like, oh, I'm very grateful that people think of me that way. He's like, don't get me wrong. He's like, I love the individual characters who didn't growing up. But he's like, but it's just not that thing anymore. It's like I give him credit because so many actors won't say that, and I was like that. He's taking some ownership of his behavior, but then he's kind of putting out there, I think, the worst kept secret.
It's like Eddie Murphy Raw. What's in it for me? Because even now it'll be difficult to, obviously Ryan Coogler is supposedly working with Denzel Washington, obviously not a small name in his movie, unless you're him, unless you're a director that's doing a movie. Let's say Chris Nolan is doing a MCU movie out of nowhere. People will be signing up because it's Chris Nolan, not because it's the MCU. So right now, the sentiment is still the same, especially we're talking about reset. You got to talk to me about the future. And if X-Men is not part of the future, because we don't know what conversation he had with them, but still, are they capable of bringing back the excitement that once was the MCU? And can it elevate careers like it did? Right now, it isn't doing that. Right now, it can't prove that can do that. And we don't know if it can do that in the future with what they're trying to give us next.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest success they've had in the last couple of years have been retrospectives, right? The conclusion of Guardians of the Galaxy. Deadpool and Wolverine is a looking back through time celebration, right? Of Deadpool, Wolverine, Blade, Gambit, Elektra, like all these. That's a backward looking Chris Evans as Human Torch, right? They're not launching new characters forward. Guardians 3 was not launching new characters forward. So that's what I mean by the Marvel forward progress remains challenged. Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, right? These have been disappointments even as the quality picked up from Brave New World. So yeah, I mean, we talked about it in our buzz rankings in Hollywood. Like Marvel's got a down arrow, still has a down arrow until further notice.
Yep.
And the thing that they are pinning everything on to change the arrow and change the fortunes and the directions is not really Doomsday and Secret Wars. That is a money grab of an existing property that they are trying to use to wrap up things.
But that money grab can result in a bad taste in people's mouth if they're not able to pull off whatever it is they're trying to pull off here.
Look at the critic scores, the audience scores for Infinity War and, Endgame and Avengers 1 and even Ultron. It's like you don't want that next one to be rotten and forgotten. Like that's the risk you run. But my point is that's not really a launch pad. They can say that they're going to bring in some characters who they're going to carry forward into the new universe, and that's all well and good. But most people going to those movies are going for, similar to Deadpool and Wolverine, to look back, right? To see actors and actresses they already knew from roles they've seen before, or new versions or variant versions of Chris Evans or whoever. They're not going to be in that particular film to be as interested in whatever seeds are going to be planted. It's the X-Men where all depends in terms of getting the hype really back for the new project.
One last question before we move on to X-Men. If Doomsday and Secret Wars fails to deliver what the studio expects to gain from this, Brian, do you keep Kevin Feige and the crew on board? The only reason is because if these things, like we just said, if these are bad taste in your mouth, why would I come back to the same chef if he just cooked me a bad meal? We got to see what happens there with Secret Wars and Doomsday. X-Men lead producer named, and it sparks concerns. Plus, we talk about our initial build or non-build for the X-Men. What's the latest with this lead producer that has been named?
So if you guys know how this works, Kevin Feige is the producer of producers. But then within the parliament or within the ranks, each project has sort of a point person, who is more the day-to-day producer of that particular project. And that's not always Kevin Feige. Sometimes it's him, but not always. So they announced that Stephen Broussard, or it's not confirmed, but he's reportedly going to be the lead producer for the X-Men film, which we know is being directed by Jake Shire from Thunderbolts. And so the concern has just been people immediately started tracing back. Well, what else has Stephen Broussard been the point person for to see, like, what are we getting here? Should we be excited or not? And, it's kind of a mixed bag. He actually has been associated with Marvel properties for 20 years. I'm not gonna hold against him that he worked on the Tim Story Fantastic Four and X-Men: The Last Stand because he was like a low-level assistant. That's not his. People are saying like, oh, he was on. I'm like, come on. He's like Kevin Feige being an assistant on X-Men back in the day. Like,
give me that
yeah,
coffee.
you can't hold that on him. So the stuff that would be relevant, the idea is that he's done some okay stuff, but he's not on any of the greats, right? So he started on Incredible Hulk. He was on First Avenger, so he's involved in the first cycle. Then he does Iron Man 3, which you can debate viewpoint on that. Doc Strange 1, which I actually like, but like is one of the lesser successful ones. And then he's most recently been really involved with Ant-Man. So Ant-Man and the Wasp and then Quantumania. So you can kind of see like he doesn't really have like I would probably say Quantumania is the only like true dud on that list.
Yeah.
But he has definitely not been the lead person for any of the elite stuff that Marvel has done. So fans are immediately concerned that like, okay, does this mean that the point person for X-Men is not going to be kind of top shelf?
So you're saying he was the lead? Was he the lead in First Avengers?
I think the implication is that,
Avengers?
He would have been like more the day-to-day producer for each of those projects. Yeah. And then on TV, he gets some points for TV because apparently he's one of the lead producers for Loki and Werewolf by Night. So again, this is not all bad. I'm just pointing out, apparently the reaction has kind of been like concern.
Uh-oh. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I mean, again, some of those names of movies that you mentioned, we can sort of point to what possible effect it would have had on the outcome of those movies because of who he was dealing with. So this one perhaps may be the, what's it called? Duke talking to Rocky in Rocky 4.
You know what you gotta do. Do it. Do it.
You're the one. You know,
make sure the universe didn't die for nothing.
Exactly. So I think this is his chance to show what he got, or else if it doesn't work, he's gone. But
I also noticed that this is evenly split between origins and sequels, right? So if you look at First Avenger, launch point, Doc Strange, launch point, Incredible Hulk, kind of a launch point, Werewolf by Night, definitely launch point. And then you say Iron Man 3, sequel, Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man 3, sequels, even Loki, sequel. So he kind of is evenly split. But I guess if you're making one of the cases for why Marvel might want him on this is that he does have experience doing initial films in series.
So you want to talk about our initial tease, Brian, of what this X-Men roster or this movie stories should be? Or
I think it's in light of this, like, okay, we know we have a director, we reportedly have a producer, and we have the, pending a very huge year next year with Doomsday and Brand New Day, we have this state of the MCU where it is today. And I think it's at least worth starting to tease out the conversation of what can they do? What should they do in terms of using the X-Men to inject energy and enthusiasm back into Marvel as a brand on the big screen? And what can they do? Because I do think that may not always be the same answer.
I mean, I've always expressed the idea of building this up and not just because I think X-Men is an Avengers level type of event, and we've already seen movie titles with X-Men. We get the whole squad. I think the approach should be a bit different, perhaps. Why they are going to be calling it the Mutant Saga, and perhaps I don't know how they're going to approach with naming this film, but I've always thought they should have given us something to sort of be excited about initially and build up towards, with perhaps a Wolverine anthology series, which is still out there, which makes the most sense, and to get us into the world as it has evolved because of this mutant situation is an opportunity to put in characters and introduce us to certain situations, thought process of different eras, and just get us prepared for this X-Men, or this new X-Men team, and with these characters. So that would be the approach that I would have wanted them to take, and not just give us an X-Men film, because the blueprint is right there with the Avengers for me, in my opinion, right? And I understand the necessity to change direction and give us the X-Men, but in what world are you putting us in, right? I guess we'll see in Secret Wars what that looks like. But a lot of things that for me has to happen before X-Men comes. I think you and I have talked about the build of the X-Men, and we've also talked about what audience they're going to be targeting, or what audience is being targeted to get people into the theaters. I don't know if giving us a young X-Men team will be the thing to get us to where we need to go with the X-Men, because even in the X-Men, the animated series, these are grown adults. We're not dealing with kids. Obviously, there are some young people in there, but even Jubilee changed their clothes, their outfit, and grown up. How they do this will be a determining factor for many of us on how much excitement we have for what
So
they
let
have to offer.
me throw a couple of ideas and questions at you for how to do this. So number one is, we are seeing in superhero storytelling and an IP storytelling a movement away from the origin story. We are seeing more versions where like Superman, you just get brought in and maybe they backfill stuff and maybe they don't. So you're making the case that you'd rather see a progression toward the assembly of the X-Men. So this is my counter to that, is like, the world seems to be moving to a place where they just almost want to be bringing you into a story with the X-Men or the X-Men already, and you just kind of catch up. Do you feel like that is giving away too much meat on the bone out of the gate if they do that? And do you feel like Marvel might have to do that because of where the universe is, that they can't wait because they need the money, they need the buzz, and therefore they need out of the gate a kind of fully formed, or at least substantial roster of characters to show you?
I guess it all depends, obviously, on what story they're going for, Brian, because a lot of the stories that they sort of tell, we have some sort of familiarity in terms of titles, except for Last Stand. We knew what was involved with the Phoenix and stuff like that. It's like, if they get away from the Phoenix, I think if they just get away from the Phoenix, I think there's some hope. If we get away from the Phoenix and introduce her for a possible, I don't know, Brian, the Phoenix Saga type situation, I'm all for that.
I am
I
1,000% out. I want no part of it.
Live
Phoenix
action
again?
Live action.
I think that is commercial death if they do it again after it's been on screen multiple times already.
The build towards it, though, I think would be. I'm not saying in the first movie. I'm not even saying in the second movie, but seeing all these other characters that they were able to introduce in the Phoenix Saga. I'm telling you, that Phoenix Saga, the X-Men animated cartoon.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
If you haven't seen
it's a 10 out of 10. I'm not arguing that. I'm simply saying it's been ruined by Last Stand and by the version they did in Dark Phoenix. I think it's been ruined on the big screen for a while because of that.
I'd like to see it, but if they can give us again a different story, because there's the Sentinels. Do we want to see that again? This is the challenge. There's a lot of things, Brian.
So this is the challenge. Like, this is not a character that's been stuck in limbo where they're trying to get it onto the big screen. These are characters that have been on the big screen very often. And if you think about how this has been done, the Bryan Singer version, they are the X-Men already, right? That's a version that basically got rid of the origin story, gave you a little bit of flashback, used Wolverine and Rogue as the entry point. But basically, you come into the school already is up and running, and the main characters are already there, and Magneto's already got his crew. Whereas the Matthew Vaughn version was more the origin, right? That was young Xavier, young Eric, the formation of the initial recruits of the school. And that one, obviously, for the most part, other than some cameos, stayed away from Wolverine. So that's already been done and generally was well received and generally made money until the very end of their run. It's tricky how to come at this in a way that feels actually new and different and doesn't feel like a retread and somehow feels like we are breaking new ground. I don't think the answer is that easy. I'm with you in that I like starting small and getting big. I don't know that the box office will give them the time to do that. But I don't think they will take it back to the comics origins because of the political landscape we have today. If you guys know how they met, they both worked at a psychiatric hospital in Israel treating Holocaust survivors. I will be stunned if that's the route that you see on screen these days from Disney. But I wonder how they're going to drop us into this. And I can see the case for both. I personally would like smaller and then build the roster. But I have a feeling it's going to be the full roster. And maybe they look back a little bit.
If they go the full roster, they have to do what they did in the first episode of the X-Men, the animated series, X-Men 97 animated series. A dope opening sequence. Showing their skills, not even to their full potential, but showing us something that, like when Cyclops was shooting on the ground and moving himself and doing, that was dope. When their plane got exploded for the third time, whatever the case may be, and them dudes, each of them landing safely, that's a dope sequence.
Also, X-Men 97 already mined what I think was one of the other really cool available angles, which was X-Men 97, in my mind, is a Magneto series. They flipped the perspective largely in that show to his perspective. And he's actually not even in the show for a decent amount of it. I actually think that was incredibly smart and made for more interesting storytelling, and ultimately, I think, gave a better payoff to some of the season's biggest moments. But as a result, maybe they could do that on live action as well, but it feels like that's just been done too. Because I wondered about that idea of like, could you attack this creatively by having the story told from different perspectives, as opposed to just a single vantage point of the team? Could you build a story where you're seeing part of the story from Xavier's perspective, from Magneto's perspective, from Scott and Jean's? You kind of pick your entry points and you're telling this almost like Christopher Nolan style temporal story where you're like watching the same thing through different eyes and then they kind of eventually come together. Because I do think you have to give the audience something different to make them feel like I'm living in an X world that I haven't lived with Fox before. Because again, there are points of that people hated, right? Like X-Men Origins, Last Stand, but there's points of that people really liked. Like, don't get it twisted. Like in 2004, we were celebrating X2, X-Men United as like a great piece of superhero storytelling. Days of Futures Past was a lot of fun and made a lot of money for the studio. Like, these are not, again, it's almost a little more similar to Daredevil, where it's like, these have been done pretty well at points in time. So you want to top that, but you don't want to ruin the vibes that have been there in the past.
Very interesting situation.
Big question for you.
X-Men.
I think I know your answer. I certainly know my answer. Wolverine, yes or no?
If you do, the only way I would do Wolverine is if it's a new Wolverine.
Sorry, yes. I meant a non-Hugh Jackman recast Wolverine. You want Wolverine in, yes or no?
You're talking about Wolverine, period, right?
In Jake Shire's X-Men movie, is Wolverine a main character in that film, yes or no?
I don't know if he necessarily needs to be a main character. They could treat him like they treat him now in X-Men 97. You know what I'm saying? He's there saying his thing, and you'll get those moments of dopeness, but he's not the main concern. Now, you can certainly hint at possible things that you may sort of put in your back pocket, and you create your anthology series. I'm not letting that go. The possibility of that, because you can do wonders with that IP right there. Wolverine anthology series, put him in multiple eras, and sort of get a sense of what the environment is in each of these scenarios that he's in. Because again, he's lived over what, 300-400 years? There's a lot of story to tell. And that could be your lead up to your next movie if I want to make these connections.
It's about connection.
I am 1000% no. No. I think they're almost certainly going to do it, to be clear, from a commercial popularity standpoint. But I would remind people, and comics fans will know this before I say it, there were 12 years of X-Men comics before Wolverine was introduced to the team. He is not part of the Uncanny X-Men. He comes in, he doesn't even get introduced to Marvel Comics at all until Incredible Hulk in 1974, which was a full decade after X-Men had started. He is not a cornerstone necessity in my mind, and I would argue the shadow of Hugh Jackman, similar to the shadow of RDJ, is so large, I think you do yourself disservice if you put him in the movie as a recast, because people will immediately be like laser locked on comparing Hugh's portrayal to this new portrayal. I think you're better off giving the movie a chance to breathe and your new characters a chance to breathe by not even acknowledging his existence. How you acknowledge his existence is through Easter eggs, locations, things that let you know he is out there somewhere and someday will come into this project. But I think it's like a sideshow distraction the second he shows up on screen, where we are right this second. So I am vehemently pleading with Marvel, leave Wolverine on the shelf, because you know what? We're talking about what's a big reveal and what's not. He is a big reveal someday if you hold him. That is a big reveal. A new Wolverine teased and showing up in X-Men 3 is a big freaking deal. Don't waste it.
But if you have to show him,
it can't be, and it can't be
don't
Hugh.
make him the main guy.
It can't be Hugh.
No, it can't be Hugh. No. It's like, that's how it feels. It's like, listen, Hugh Jackman has done a tremendous job as Wolverine. There's no doubt about it. But you guys want to do something new. There's nothing new.
And it's a
about
weird
Hugh
fit.
Jackman.
If you really are going to go young X-Men, are you going to put like Hugh Jackman in his 50s or whatever? I get it that Wolverine is timeless, but to me, that's an odd chemistry. So and again, I would remind people in Uncanny X-Men 1, Wolverine is nowhere to be found, right? It's Beast. I'm not saying they have to rehash X-Men 1. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm simply pointing out that the formation of this team had nothing to do with him for a long time, right? It was Beast, it was Angel, it was, who am I missing? Was Cyclops one of the four? I think he was. There's like four.
Is Jean?
No, Jean's not. It's all male, so they wouldn't do that. And I think searching for Storm comes pretty early on. It's like him and Eric are searching for Storm. That's like pretty early on in the sequence. But Wolverine, like I said, doesn't come in until 12 years later as part of, I think it's Giant X-Men is where he first appears.
And what was the popularity of those characters before Wolverine?
Pretty high. I mean, it was like I said, as a social commentary and as sort of something that was different than what people had seen. I think they were pretty successful. So, yes, I think we obviously can get there and we should get there. But I actually would hold him as like a Thanos or Nick Fury credit scene type of tease at some point. And then you unleash your new actor with enough room to breathe away from Hugh.
Yeah, man. There's certainly a lot of ideas for how this X-Men, I think we'll get a little bit deeper at some point in terms of casting for X-Men, but how they should go about doing this. There's a lot of avenues. Hopefully they choose the correct one in order for us to get back on board with the X-Men. Because like you said, they've done it well before. How different can you do this one? We can't go back to the same formula. I'm sorry. Right? And we can't have Wolverine be the main guy. It wasn't the intent. But you had people in there, executives, Wolverine is the guy. We gotta make this dude the guy, and everybody whatever, right? Everybody else is whatever.
Eggs. I think one thing they absolutely, positively should be borrowing from X-Men 97 is they have the perfect backdoor avenue to recast and re-announce the Avengers along the way. It's so
Yes.
slam
Yes.
dunk. It helps the box office and the buzz for your X-Men movie. But just like X-Men 97, just like the one scene, hey, there's Steve Rogers, one scene. Hey, there's Iron Man. We don't even see Tony. Like, there's Spider-Man. We don't even see Peter. You just drop them in for 10 seconds and people will lose their minds. And you're like, that's the new one, the post-Secret Wars one.
You didn't have to show their faces. Like Captain America, he has his, but you can see from behind him talking to the general and stuff like that. We don't have to see these people. We can just know that they're there, look at them, and have people go crazy. And then get back to the main story with X-Men, because X-Men, like you said, X-Men 97 did it brilliantly, yo. We don't have to, we're there for Iron Man, Captain, not RDJ, not Chris Evans, not Tom Holland, not even Charlie Cox. We're there for Daredevil, Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, those characters. And just seeing them, knowing that they're around, and perhaps you may build something, that's what we're there for, especially if you're moving towards this new direction and starting with the X-Men. But it's going to be very interesting. It is going to be very interesting to see how they pull this off and get people back in the theaters to get, although you said the $1 billion box office, but at least the attempt at being successful with how they manage their money and making these movies,
X-Men has never reached $1 billion.
Well.
None of the movies have ever gotten there. So, and nowadays we'd probably say 700 is the new billion, but this is a challenge. This is my point. Like, in some ways, this is actually a little harder than rebooting Batman, who has been to $1 billion multiple times before as a character. So, and it's coming at a time where, as we said, Jeremy Allen White summed it up for you. Like, this is not the thing anymore. It's a thing, but it's not the thing. And the task of the X-Men is to make it the thing again.
Yep. So yeah, let us know in the comment section below. That's how Marvel Roundup shows Spidey 4 and Doomsday teasers may be coming with Avatar. Just like Brian said, Jeremy Allen White sort of summed it up as to where they are as far as actors wanting to be a part of that world. Channing Tatum is not one of them, right? He is I don't want to hear from this dude, but we're gonna keep on hearing from him until this movie is done and over with, because we know he's not coming back. God forbid he comes back as an X-Men in this New Mutant saga. Okay, but he's gonna.
I get it. Yeah,
he's gonna try his Tom Holland act and try to
especially,
get in there.
And the thing is, I mean, just we'll get into a little bit more in the void with Star Wars, but especially if there is any change. Listen, if there's any change, right? There's rumblings finally of. I saw the first story this week. I think it was in Variety or Hollywood Reporter with no details, but just a drop in the middle of a story, kind of saying that like Disney is kind of going sour finally on Kevin Feige and Kathleen Kennedy. And they're kind of like, what are we getting from these departments? I saw the first mention of like, that they're like, and that doesn't come out of nowhere, right? That means someone inside of Disney planted that in that publication to kind of be like, we're not happy.
Interesting developments. You heard it here on the Nerd Jet Report. Let us know what you guys think of all we've spoken of in this Marvel Roundup. With regards, obviously, to the X-Men as well. Hit that like and subscribe. You know that we don't bother you every once. We don't hit you every time. Although we should be telling you hit that like and subscribe throughout the things. You know what I'm saying? But we let you hear what you need to hear first before we ask for that silence. So hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Nerd Gen Report.